We all have someone in our lives who leaves an imprint that's too deep to forget. This is the story of Gene, a man who touched the hearts of everyone who knew him, even as he faced the end of his life. A few years ago, Gene received devastating news. The doctors told him he had melanoma and just 6 weeks to live. Even though the diagnosis was grim, Gene felt fine at first. He held on to those 6 weeks with a quiet strength, determined to make the most of the time he had left. The day he got his diagnosis, Gene called his closest friend. He shared the heartbreaking news that he only had weeks left, but in typical Gene fashion, he added a lighthearted joke, saying he still felt okay. It was as if, even in the face of death, he was trying to keep the mood light for those around him. But there was another twist of fate that day. Just minutes after Gene told his father about his diagnosis, his older brother called with news that was equally devastating. He too had cancer, brain cancer, and only had 2 months to live. Gene turned to his father and said, "I guess it's a race to see who gets to the end first." In that moment, he found a way to smile through the unbearable weight of knowing his time was running out. 2 days later, on his 56th birthday, Gene returned to his workplace to pack up his things. His co-workers, knowing it could be the last time they'd see him, decided to celebrate. They brought him a cake, lit the candles, and asked him what he wanted for his birthday. Very short books. Even in his final moments at work, Gene's humor shone through. He was a man who knew how to bring joy even when life was slipping away. A week before he passed, Gene made one last phone call. He told his friend that he had managed to pay off the mortgage on his house, securing his wife's future. He laughed softly, saying he never thought he'd live to see that day. It was the last thing he could do for her. The final act of love from a man who knew he wouldn't be there to grow old with her. Gene and Carol shared a beautiful life together, full of love and laughter. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Gene had planned something unforgettable. While they were traveling in Europe, he surprised her by renewing their vows in a church in Venice, the same church where his parents had been married over 50 years ago. It was a moment that spoke of the depth of their connection, a love story that would endure even after Gene was gone. But perhaps the most beautiful gift Gene left behind came after his death. He had written dozens of post-it notes for Carol, hiding them in places where he knew she'd find them. Some said, "Spend the money and enjoy yourself." Others said, "Sell my car, you don't need it." And the one that touched her the most. Even 9 months after his passing, Carol was still finding these notes. They became her most cherished memories of Gene, a reminder that, in his own way, he was still there with her. Gene's funeral was huge. So many people came to pay their respects to the man who had touched their lives with his humor, kindness, and quiet strength. He had no regrets. He lived his life fully, loved deeply, and even after he was gone, he remained connected to the people who mattered most. Gene may be gone, but his love, his humor, and his spirit live on in those he left behind. Remember to cherish the ones you love, for they remain with us long after they are gone. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of love, loss, and the human spirit.